Okay, we're going to put some highlights on our bushes. And all we need for that is a touch of green, not a lot, just a touch of green. A dot. A bit of yellow. And a bit of brown. This is our basic highlight color that we use. I use this color for just about, pretty much just about any tree or grass or bushes. That is my go-to highlight color. Sometimes I leave the green out completely, which you can do that if you're looking just for more brown tones. All right, just a little bit of the green. I've got my 1-inch chip brush again. I'm just dipping a little into the yellow, a little into the brown, and have just a touch of green in there. Now the more yellow you have in this, the more striking your highlights are going to be. If it tends more to the brown color, it's going to be a lot softer, not as noticeable. All right, I'm going to tap out all this excess color. We don't want a ton of paint on our bristles. I'm just going to start tapping in. That's a little bit subdued. I think I want a little more yellow than that. Yeah, there we go. The only color, well, the highlight colors, the yellow and the brown, sometimes when you put those on the canvas, they look a lot brighter, but once they dry, they almost just disappear into the background. That's one thing I've had issues with sometimes when using these colors. So just keep that in mind, that if it's a little bit subdued looking, to make sure you throw some more yellow in there. And it's not the end of the world if you have to go back and add yellow afterward. I do that all the time. But we're just adding a little bit of detail to our bushes here. If you want to have it so that one bush looks like it's in front of another one, you just add a little more yellow to it. See how that just popped this guy forward? That's all you have to do. Put a up there. And if your post is dry and you want to make some of that highlight come right out in front there, just to kind of settle it in to the bushes, like the bushes are right around it, you can do that. Or you can leave it alone, that's fine too. Okay, for the next step, we're going to be putting in some of our dry brush, some of our highlights, just the aged look on the mailbox and the post. And for that, I'm going to use a stiff bristle hog hair brush. And I've still got some brown and white and stuff on this plate, so I'm just going to go ahead and use this. And so all I'm going to do, I don't want to use straight white for this. I just want a touch of this brown. So I'm just kind of making a light tan color here. And all I'm going to do, I don't want this brush just loaded with paint. You don't want a ton of it on there. That's kind of the point of the dry brush technique, is you don't have a ton of paint. We're just going to brush in. Now see how it doesn't brush on smoothly? It's got a very textured, rough look. That's what we're looking for. We're just going along the top and following the contours of the mailbox as we go. Now this same dry brush technique can be applied to a lot of different things. It's really great for making aged wood. Like I like to use this when I'm painting barns. Just really, it's a really nice and easy way to make stuff look old. If you've got a spot that, like right there, you can lick your finger and it kind of helps blend it out a little bit. No, don't be afraid to finger paint. And then I do want a little bit more highlight right around the edge, front edge of the mailbox. Oops, I got into that black a little bit. Brush that off. All right, and then we'll do the same thing a little bit in the front and the little lid of the mailbox. And if you want to put a little bit on the little tabs, you can. If you want to really, if you're looking at that and you're like, I want that to be a little more dramatic, you can go into the straight white. Just be really careful when you're doing that. It's a real light touch. And if you go through and you put some white in there and you're like, oh man, that was way too much, I shouldn't have done that, go back through with some of the darker color and paint back over it again. That's quite all right. All right, now we're gonna get down to our post here. Still got a little bit of wet right there. We're gonna try to, you gotta be careful when you've got paint drying that's still wet, because if I try to go through that with this dry brush technique, it's gonna scrape all that tacky paint right off the canvas and bring it right back down to the base of the canvas. So you don't wanna go into tacky drying paint. So we're gonna just avoid those sections. I'm gonna sit here, I've got the highlight color, I'm gonna set some right here just to test it out. Yeah, I like that. So we're gonna start right at the light edge where this light is shining on it. Because you want your whitest area to be the outside area where the sun is hitting first. And we don't want to go like too high up in here because remember this is going to be shadowed in there. So if you want to hold your brush horizontally instead of vertically, you can do that too. I'm just doing this to get some thicker lines in here. Now as I get over to the darker area, I don't have as much paint on my brush. It's not going to be as dramatic. I still want some of those highlights. I don't want to leave it completely alone. I want some of that wood grain texture, but I just don't want it as heavy in the white. I want the texture without all of the highlights. I'm going to put a little more over here. All right, and now I'm going to add just a little bit of the dark brown. I haven't washed my brush. You can if you want to, but going to this real dark brown. Black and a little bit of brown, essentially. I'm going to come up through here and drop down some shadow in here. And I'm going to put a little bit of the dark in here too. But I have less of the dark streaks on this side and more of the dark streaks on this side. It's a little heavier on the dark. One thing you want to do as you're painting, step back every once in a while and see what you got going on. It's a lot easier to get an idea of how the painting's coming together if you step back from it. Because sometimes it's hard to see the big picture when you're too close to it. I mean, you can see really well what you're working on now, but sometimes you gotta take a good look from a distance. Alright, I'm just kind of going through and blending stuff now. Alright, take a look at that. I like that. If you want it more dramatic, greater contrast for just a more dramatic look from, across the room. If you're going to have this hung up somewhere where people can't get real close to look at it, you may want to make sure that that you've got a lot of good contrast in here. So you might want to brighten up the whites a little bit. There we go. I am actually going to add a little bit more white right here. There we go. All right, so our mailbox is pretty much done. We just need to put our flag on now. Now you can use charcoal here, or you don't have to. You can just paint it in if you want to. We're gonna make sure that we have enough room because we want to put a little bluebird sitting on top of it. So we got a little bluebird here, a little bluebird here. Put our little flag right here. It's all you need to make like a dark, old, aged red, a little brown or a little black or a little both. You'll need a detail brush. Doesn't really matter what size, just whatever you're comfortable with using. I'm going to put a touch of black, a touch of brown in here. Just makes kind of a dark red. And then I'm just going to fill this in. Now, we've got to keep in mind where our light source is coming from. And we're going to throw some highlights on that. Now remember, when you've got red involved, putting white can turn it pink, which is okay for highlights, but just keep that in mind. All right, I'm going to put a little bit of white up in here. And along the top. Now if you've got too much white in there and you don't like how pink it's turned everything, you can add a little bit of red back in, or you can just clean your brush off and blend some of that red back over top of that white. Before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my new classes.